Annie January had survived the Deep's assault, Homelander's threats, and Vogt's endless machine of lies. She'd survived watching heroes she once idolized reveal themselves as narcissists, rapists, and murderers wearing capes. She'd survived her own complicity, the cameras, the forced smiles, the scripts that turned heroism into product placement. But as the multiverse tore open beneath her feet during what should have been a routine save in Manhattan, her Manhattan, the one owned by Vault International, Annie wasn't sure she'd survive whatever came next. The sensation was like being ripped through television static made of knives. One moment she was blasting Compound V-fueled terrorists in Times Square for the cameras, playing her part in Vaught's newest stage crisis. The next, reality shredded like wet paper, and she was falling through a kaleidoscope of fractured worlds. Universes where the sky burned red, where New York was underwater, where the Statue of Liberty held a different torch. The light she generated instinctively, desperately, illuminated nothing but her own terror as she tumbled through the spaces between realities. When she hit solid ground, it knocked the air from her lungs. Pavement, real, unforgiving New York pavement. But wrong. The city smelled different. Less ozone from Compound V battles. More, she couldn't place it. Burnt metal, quantum residue. Her Midwestern instincts had no reference for whatever energies saturated this place. Annie pushed herself up, costume torn, blonde hair matted with blood from a cut above her eye. Her hands glowed reflexively, photokinetic energy crackling around her fingers as she scanned for threats. The alley was empty. Beyond it, she heard traffic, voices, the normal rhythm of a city. But the advertisements on the buildings visible from her vantage point were wrong. No Vault logos, no the 7 merchandise. Instead, Stark Industries Rebuilding New York and a memorial billboard showing a man in red and gold armor with the dates "We Love You 3000. Her chest tightened. Different universe. Had to be. The multiverse theories Vault scientists whispered about, the dimensional breaches the 7 had fought in classified missions. She was living proof now. NYPD, hands where I can see them. Annie spun, light flaring bright enough to cast harsh shadows. 2 police officers stood at the alley entrance, guns drawn but lowering slightly at the blinding display. These weren't Vault-bot cops who looked the other way for the 7. Their body language read genuine caution, genuine concern. I'm a hero, Annie said, the words tasting like ash. How many times had she said that? How many times had it been a lie? Ma'am, we're going to need you to power down and come with us, the older officer said, his tone more worried than aggressive. We've got protocols for enhanced individuals. SHIELD will... No! The word came out harder than she intended, powered by months of rage at Vault's handlers, at Ashley's scripts, at every committee that had controlled her. No agencies, no handlers, no fucking protocols. She launched skyward before they could respond, leaving scorched pavement and 2 very confused officers in her wake. The flight felt right, same air resistance, same instinctive control, but the city sprawling beneath her was alien. She'd flown over New York thousands of times, knew every Vault tower, every 7 monument, every corporate plaza. This Manhattan had different scars. Entire blocks showed signs of reconstruction. A massive vacant lot where Stark Tower should be held construction equipment and a sign, future home of the Avengers campus. Avengers? The word meant nothing to her, but it was plastered everywhere. Memorials, murals, museums. As she flew lower, searching for somewhere to land and think, she passed a massive banner outside what looked like a museum. Heroes who gave everything, in memory of Iron Man, Black Widow, and Vision. Heroes who gave everything. Not heroes who sold protein, shakes, and streaming subscriptions. The distinction made something crack in her chest. Annie landed on a rooftop in Hell's Kitchen, an area that felt grittier, more real than Midtown's polished facade. She sat with her back against a ventilation unit, pulled her knees to her chest, and finally let herself shake. Adrenaline crash mixed with the existential horror of being stranded in another universe. No way home, no Huey, no Mother's Milk, or Frenchie, or Kimiko. No one who knew her, who knew what she'd survived, but also no Homelander, no Ashley, no cameras, no Vought. The thought was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. As the sun set over this strange New York, painting the sky in oranges and purples, Annie January made a decision. She'd been Starlight in a universe that commodified heroism and enabled monsters. If she was stuck here, in whatever this place was, she'd figure out what heroism actually meant. On her terms, without scripts or handlers or corporate overlords. She had no idea that 3 blocks away, Sam Wilson was reviewing NYPD reports of an unregistered enhanced individual with light-based powers. She didn't know that, in a SWORD orbital station, sensors had detected a multiversal breach signature. She couldn't have known that in a luxury office in Manhattan, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine was already pulling strings, seeing opportunity in chaos. All Annie knew was that the light gathering in her palms felt cleaner here somehow. Like maybe in this universe, it could illuminate something other than lies. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. The city's lights began flickering on as darkness fell, and Annie stood, squaring her shoulders. She'd survived Vought's hell. Whatever this universe threw at her, she'd face it as herself, not as a corporate asset, not as a scripted hero, but as Annie January trying to figure out if genuine heroism was even possible. First step, stay off whatever radar these Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. operated. Trust had to be earned, and after everything she'd endured, her capacity for trust was nearly exhausted. She took flight again, staying low, using the city's shadows. Somewhere in this vast, strange New York, there had to be answers. There had to be a way forward. Behind her, unnoticed, a surveillance drone marked with a sword insignia tracked her trajectory with silent efficiency. Sam Wilson had seen a lot in his years as an Avenger. Alien invasions, robot uprisings, half the universe turning to dust, and then undusting 5 years later. But the report sitting on his tablet, enhanced individual, light-based powers, extreme hostility to authority, multiversal energy signature, hit different. Post-blip, post-multiverse of madness, the boundaries between realities had gotten Swiss cheese thin. He'd hoped for a few months without cosmic-level complications. "So much for hope," he muttered, reviewing the NYPD body cam footage for the 3rd time. The woman's face was clear in the freeze frame. Blonde, mid-20s, terrified beneath the defiance. Her costume looked professional, corporate even, white and gold with a star motif. But the way she'd flinched when the officers mentioned protocols, the raw panic in her eyes, that wasn't the behavior of someone with sinister intentions. That was someone running from something. "You planning to stare at that all night, or actually do something?" Bucky Barnes leaned against the doorframe of Sam's apartment, arms crossed, the very picture of studied indifference that didn't fool Sam for a second. "Multiversal refugee, Buck. Sword wants her detained for questioning. Fury's successor is even less warm and fuzzy than he was." Sam closed the file. "I'm thinking maybe we approach this differently. We being you shut up and come with me." Sam grabbed his wings from the corner. Woman scared, enhanced, and alone in a universe that's not hers. Last thing she needs is a tactical team treating her like a threat. Bucky's expression softened fractionally. "Personal touch. I remember when Steve did that for me." He paused. "Multiple times." "Yeah, well, Steve left some big boots to fill." Sam activated his comm. "Torres, you still tracking her heat signature?" Joaquin Torres' voice crackled through. "Got her. Hell's Kitchen, rooftop hopping. She's good, staying low, avoiding cameras. But our satellite's better. Sending coordinates now." 20 minutes later, Sam and Bucky touched down on a rooftop 2 blocks from their target's last known position. The Hell's Kitchen night was alive with distant sirens, the rumble of the subway, the specific energy of a neighborhood that had seen its share of enhanced individuals and remained stubbornly, defiantly itself. "There," Bucky pointed with his vibranium arm. On a water tower 3 buildings over, a figure sat silhouetted against the city lights, glowing faintly. Sam approached slowly, wings retracted, hands visible, non-threatening. "Hey, mind if we talk?" The figure tensed, light flaring bright enough to cast sharp shadows. Then she recognized him. He saw it in the way her posture shifted from combat-ready to confused. "You're Captain America," she said, voice carrying across the gap. Not awed, wary. "Sam Wilson," he corrected, stopping at the roof's edge. "And that's Bucky Barnes. We're not here to arrest you or drag you to some facility. Just want to talk." "Right." The woman, Starlight, according to Vault International databases that Torres had pulled from residual multiversal data, stood, light still crackling around her fists. Because in my experience, when famous heroes show up saying, "We just want to talk," it ends with cameras and scripts and me doing whatever serves their agenda. Bucky raised an eyebrow at Sam. "She's not wrong about the cameras." "Not helping, Buck." Sam kept his voice level, calm. "Look, I get it. You don't know us, don't know this world. But that energy signature you're giving off, it's lighting up every sensor from here to the Sword Orbital Station. You want to stay under the radar? You're doing it wrong." Starlight's laugh was bitter. "Oh, I know all about surveillance. Vought had cameras in everything. Meeting rooms, locker rooms, probably our goddamn bedrooms. Every second of our lives monetized and analyzed." She took a breath, the light dimming slightly. "So forgive me if I'm not thrilled about being tracked by your sword or shield or whatever alphabet agency runs heroes here." Sam exchanged a glance with Bucky. The pain in her voice was real, deep. Whatever she'd come from, it had left scars. "Okay," Sam said, jumping the gap between buildings with practiced ease. Bucky followed, landing with barely a sound. Starlight's hands flared brighter, but she didn't attack. "Cards on the table. You're giving off multiversal breach energy. That makes some people nervous. We've had bad experiences with things coming through from other realities. But I'm not interested in locking you up. I'm interested in making sure you're okay and that you're not going to accidentally level a city block." "I can control my powers," Starlight said, defensive. "I believe you." And Sam did. The control she'd shown in the body cam footage, the precision even while panicking, spoke to extensive training. "But you're new here, probably scared, definitely confused. Let me help." "Why?" The question came out raw. "What's in it for you? The branding opportunity? Captain America mentors multiversal hero. I can see the headlines already. Or wait, let me guess. You need someone with my powers for submission, and this is the recruitment pitch." Bucky snorted. "Lady, if Sam wanted to recruit you, he'd have led with the cool factor of the wings and the fact that we've got a pretty nice setup. This," he gestured at the rooftop, "this is him actually giving a damn." "Bucky, no, she needs to hear it." Bucky turned to Starlight. "Whatever heroes were like where you came from, I'm guessing they weren't great. But Sam here? He gave up a comfortable life to carry a shield he never asked for because someone he respected asked him to. He fights for people, not cameras. So when he says he wants to help, he means it." Starlight searched their faces, and Sam saw the moment her defensive walls cracked just slightly. The exhaustion beneath her wariness, the desperate hope that maybe this place was different. "In my universe," she said quietly, "heroes are owned by a corporation called Vault International. We're products, brands. The Seven, that's the team I was on. We're not heroes. We're actors playing heroes. Most of us are narcissists or psychopaths or both. And the leader," she swallowed hard, "Homelander. He's killed hundreds, maybe thousands. Vought covers it up. The public loves him." Sam felt his jaw tighten. "Jesus. One of our members sexually assaulted me during initiation. Vought made me stay quiet for the brand." The words came out flat, practiced, like she'd said them before in therapy. "I've spent a year trying to expose them, fighting from inside, compromising everything I believed in piece by piece. And then reality broke, and I fell through, and now I'm here, and I don't." Her voice cracked. "I don't know how to trust that you're different." The silence stretched, broken only by the city's ambient noise. Sam took a slow breath. "I can't prove we're different with words. Words are cheap. You know that better than most. But here's what I can offer. No agencies, no facilities. You want to disappear into this city and figure things out on your own terms? I'll run interference with Sword. Keep them off your back for a while. You want help, guidance, someone to show you how things work here? I'm available, no strings attached. Why would you risk your relationship with Sword for a stranger? Because Steve Rogers once told me that compromising your principles for convenience is how good men become bad institutions. Sam smiled slightly. And because if half of what you went through happened to someone in this universe, I'd want another hero to give them a chance. Starlight studied him for a long moment. Then the light around her hands faded completely. I need time to think, to process, to figure out if this is real or just better PR. Fair enough. Sam pulled out a small device, tossed it gently. She caught it reflexively. Encrypted comm, untraceable, not connected to SHIELD or Sword networks. You need anything, information, help, or just someone to talk to who gets the weight of the cape. You call, or don't, your choice. Just like that? Just like that. Sam activated his wings. One more thing. Hell's Kitchen's got its own protector. Guy in a devil costume, works nights. If you run into him, he's good people. Might actually understand your trust issues better than I do. Bucky was already moving toward the roof's edge. And if you see a woman in a leather jacket who looks like she wants to punch the world, that's Jessica Jones. Fair warning, she definitely wants to punch the world, but she's also got experience with being controlled by powerful people. Might be worth a conversation. As they took off into the night sky, Sam glanced back. Starlight stood on the water tower, turning the comm device over in her hands, backlit by the city lights. She looked small, lost, and unbearably alone. Think she'll call? Bucky asked as they glided toward Sam's apartment. I think she needs to know she has the option not to, Sam replied. Everything else is up to her. Below them, Annie January stared at the comm device, then at the two heroes disappearing into the night. In her universe, kindness from heroes always had a price tag. But maybe, just maybe, this universe played by different rules. She pocketed the device and dropped to street level, pulling a hood over her distinctive blonde hair. Time to learn what this world's heroes were really like when the cameras weren't rolling. Hell's Kitchen at 2 a.m. was a different animal than the sanitized, camera-ready New York Annie knew from her universe. No vault patrols, no staged crime scenes for the Seven to heroically interrupt. Just real crime, real desperation, and the specific kind of darkness that came from a neighborhood that had been rebuilt too many times to trust easy promises. Annie had spent 3 days observing from rooftops, learning the rhythms. The drug deals on the corner of 45th and 10th, the protection rackets running out of the laundromat, the human trafficking operations she'd identified moving people through a seemingly legitimate shipping company. In her universe, Vought would have orchestrated busts for maximum media coverage, ensuring the right camera angles while letting the real operations continue in exchange for bribes. Here she'd seen something different. She'd seen a man in a dark red suit, devil horns silhouetted against the city lights, systematically dismantle a weapons deal with brutal efficiency and zero theatrics. No quips for cameras. No merchandise opportunities, just violence executed with surgical precision, then disappearing into shadows before sirens arrived. The criminals he'd left zip-tied for police were genuinely terrified, not paid actors. Real heroism looked different than she'd expected. Quieter, bloodier, more morally complicated. Tonight she was tracking the trafficking operation, gathering evidence the way Huey had taught her, carefully, methodically, building a case that would actually stick instead of Vaught's performative justice. The warehouse district was poorly lit, perfect for illicit operations and for enhanced individuals who preferred to work unseen. Annie crouched behind an HVAC unit, watching 3 men load what were clearly people, drugged, restrained, into a shipping container. Her light wanted to flare, wanted to blast these bastards into unconsciousness, but she forced control. Rushing in had gotten people killed before. Strategy first. You planning to just watch or actually do something about it? Annie spun, light erupting from her hands, illuminating a woman in a black leather jacket leaning against the rooftop access door. Dark hair, resting bitch face that suggested she'd perfected it through years of practice, and an expression of profound annoyance with the universe in general. "Jessica Jones," the woman said, taking a pull from a flask. "And before you ask, yes, I'm enhanced. Super strength, limited flight that I hate using, and a strong desire for everyone to leave me the hell alone. You're the new multiversal girl lighting up every sensor in the city." Annie's hand stayed bright. "You here to turn me in? Do I look like I work for Sword?" Jessica snorted. "I'm a private investigator who occasionally gets dragged into hero bullshit against my better judgment. Sam Wilson asked me to keep an eye out. Make sure you weren't going to do anything stupid." She nodded toward the warehouse. "This qualifies as stupid. They're trafficking people." "Yeah, I know. I've been investigating them for 3 weeks." Jessica pulled out her phone, showed Annie photos documenting the operation. Dates, times, faces, license plates, actual detective work. "I've got enough evidence to bury them and their bosses. NYPD's organized crime unit hits them tomorrow night when they've got a major shipment. Clean, legal. The people they've trafficked actually get help instead of being used as props for hero PR." The last part hit Annie like a slap. "How did you—" "Sam mentioned you came from a universe where heroes are corporate assets. I came from a situation where a man controlled my mind and body, made me do things." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Let's just say I get not trusting the system. But there's a difference between healthy skepticism and self-destructive isolation." Annie's light dimmed fractionally. "You're saying I should trust the authorities here?" "Hell no. Half the cops are corrupt. The other half are just trying to survive the bureaucracy, and the system's broken in about 40 different ways." Jessica took another drink. "But there are people trying to fix it from inside. My friend Misty Knight, for instance. Clean cop. Actually gives a damn. The ones who aren't on the take will use this evidence to put these bastards away. Your way, busting in solo, no plan, probably getting people killed in the crossfire, that's ego disguised as heroism." The words stung because they were true. How many times had the Seven's heroic interventions resulted in collateral damage that Vaught's PR machine had to bury? How many times had Annie's desire to be a hero actually made things worse? "So what? I just stand here and watch?" The frustration bled into her voice. "No." Jessica's expression softened slightly. "You learn. You adapt. You figure out how to be effective instead of just performative." She paused. "There's someone you should meet. Devil of Hell's Kitchen, works nights. He'd understand what you're going through better than most." As if summoned by the mention, a figure in dark red dropped onto the rooftop with barely a sound. Annie's hands flared again, but the man held up his hands, gloved, baton holstered at his thigh, devil horns catching the ambient light. "Jessica," he said, voice rough but controlled. His head turned toward Annie despite the mask covering his eyes. "And you must be Starlight. I've been hearing about you. Daredevil, meet the multiversal refugee who's about to learn why solo heroics in Hell's Kitchen are a bad idea." Jessica gestured toward the warehouse. "She was about to blow your weeks of reconnaissance because she's got a savior complex." "I don't have a—" Annie started, but Daredevil cut her off. "Yes, you do. I can hear it in your heartbeat, the way you're breathing. You see injustice, and you want to fix it immediately because waiting feels like complicity." He tilted his head. "I'm guessing wherever you came from, hesitation got people hurt." Annie swallowed hard. "In my universe, heroes don't investigate. We perform. Vought stages situations. We save people. Everyone goes home happy except for the actual victims who we ignore once the cameras stop rolling. Then you're in for an adjustment period." Daredevil moved to the roof's edge, tracking something Annie couldn't see or hear. "This operation connects to the Magic Crime family, the Russian mob, and a corrupt city councilman. We hit it now. We save maybe 15 people tonight, and the network's rebuild in a week. We coordinate with the proper authorities, build an airtight case. We save hundreds and dismantle their infrastructure." "How long have you been tracking them?" 6 months. No hesitation, no apology. "I know it's hard. Every night I hear people suffering, and I have to choose which injustices I can actually affect versus which ones I'd just make worse by interfering. His jaw tightened beneath the mask. It's the hardest part of this life, knowing you can't save everyone, that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is exercise patience and strategy. Annie thought of Huey, of his methodical approach to exposing Vought, of how many times her impatience had nearly derailed their efforts. I don't know how to do that. Patience, strategy. I was trained to be a blunt instrument for photo ops. So learn. Jessica pushed off the door. That's why I'm here. Sam thinks you've got potential beyond being another superpowered, punch first, ask questions later type. He's usually right about that stuff, annoyingly enough. And I'm offering to teach you how Hell's Kitchen works, Daredevil added. How to gather intelligence, how to build cases, how to actually help people instead of just making yourself feel better with grand gestures. If you're interested. Annie looked between them, a blind vigilante who fought in darkness, and a superpowered private investigator with obvious trauma and trust issues. Neither wore corporate-approved costumes, neither smiled for cameras. Both had scars, literal and figurative, from lives spent actually fighting injustice instead of performing heroism. Why? She asked quietly. Why help me? Jessica's laugh was short, sharp. Because Sam asked, and I owe him. Because Daredevil's got a savior complex that makes yours look amateur. And because, she met Annie's eyes. Because someone helped me when I was lost and broken and didn't know how to be a person again, let alone a hero. Paying it forward, I guess. Daredevil nodded. You've got power, training, and from what I understand, genuine desire to help people. That's rare. Most enhanced individuals are either looking for glory or profit. You've seen the dark side of both, and you're still trying to do the right thing. That's worth nurturing. Annie felt something crack in her chest. The defensive wall she'd built over months of fighting Vought from the inside, of not knowing who to trust, of every kindness being a manipulation. These people didn't know her anything. And they were offering exactly what she needed. Guidance without control, training without exploitation. Okay, she said, hands finally dimming completely. Teach me. Jessica pulled out her phone. First lesson, documentation. You're going to learn how to gather evidence that'll actually hold up in court. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. Alias Investigations, 485 West 46th Street. Don't be late and bring coffee. Good coffee, not bodega swill. Second lesson happens tonight, Daredevil said. We're going to follow the money. Enhanced senses help, but patience and observation matter more than powers. You capable of staying quiet and listening for 3 hours? Annie thought of all the board meetings she'd sat through at Vought, biting her tongue while monsters in suits discussed quarterly earnings and approval ratings. Yeah, I can be quiet. Good. Daredevil moved toward the roof's edge. And Starlight? Welcome to the street level. It's not glamorous, and you won't get credit for most of what we do. But the people we save, they're real. The justice we serve, it actually means something. As Annie followed them across the rooftops of Hell's Kitchen, learning to move quietly instead of dramatically, something shifted inside her. For the first time since falling through realities, she felt like maybe she could build a life here. Not as Starlight the brand, not as Vought's asset, but as Annie January trying to figure out what heroism actually meant. Below them, the traffickers continued loading their cargo, unaware that their operations' days were numbered. Not because of a flashy superhero bust, but because 3 people in the darkness were doing the unglamorous work of actual justice. And for Annie, raised on false heroism and corporate scripts, that felt more revolutionary than anything she'd ever experienced. The Sword Orbital Station hung in geosynchronous orbit above Earth, a testament to humanity's expansion into cosmic defense. Director Abigail Brand stood in the observation deck, her green hair stark against the star field beyond the reinforced windows, reviewing holographic displays with the focused intensity of someone who'd seen too many existential threats to take chances. Multiversal breach signature confirmed, her chief analyst reported, highlighting energy patterns on the display. Subject designated MB617, Starlight, continues to operate in New York City. Power signature suggests compound V enhancement, but the molecular structure is incompatible with known Earth-616 biological augmentation. Brand studied the data with narrowed eyes. Post-Loki, post-multiverse of madness, the barriers between realities had become dangerously permeable. America Chavez's extraction had been messy enough. This woman, Annie January, according to fragmentary data pulled from residual multiversal echoes, represented an unknown variable in an increasingly unstable equation. What's her threat assessment? Moderate power level, light manipulation, flight, enhanced durability, combat training evident but not extensive. The analyst pulled up footage of Starlight's rooftop movements over the past 3 days. She's been surveilling criminal operations in Hell's Kitchen. No direct interventions. Appears to be learning? Learning what? Unknown. She's made contact with Samuel Wilson, James Barnes, Jessica Jones, and the unsanctioned Vigilante operating as Daredevil. The analyst's tone suggested professional disapproval of street-level heroes who avoided proper oversight. Wilson's running interference, keeping her off official channels. Brand's jaw tightened. Sam Wilson was Captain America now, which came with certain political protections and the expectation of collaboration with agencies like SWORD. But he'd also inherited Steve Rogers' stubborn streak about individual liberty and distrust of unchecked authority. If Sam was protecting this woman, he had reasons. Pull Wilson's communication logs. I want to know what he knows about her origin universe. Brand turned from the window. And activate Asset Valentina. If we can't bring her in through official channels, maybe the unofficial approach works better. Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine operates with significant autonomy. Using her as an asset is what I'm ordering you to do. Brand's tone left no room for argument. This woman came through a multiversal breach. That means her universe is now accessible, potentially exploitable. I need to know everything about where she came from, what she knows about multiversal travel, and whether more are coming through. Valentina has a talent for recruitment that doesn't trigger institutional allergies. Use her. The analyst nodded, already typing commands. Initiating contact with Valentina. What about Wilson's protection? Brand considered. Sam Wilson was a good man, a genuine hero, but he thought like a street-level Avenger. Save the person in front of you, deal with cosmic implications later. She thought strategically, in terms of multiversal security and existential threats. They'd clash on this eventually. Monitor, but don't interfere. Yet. Brand pulled up Starlight's profile again, studying the woman's face in the NYPD body cam footage. Fear and defiance in equal measure. Everyone who comes through a breach is either running from something or running towards something. Figure out which category she falls into. And if she's running from something that might follow her through, then we'd better hope Wilson's faith in her is justified. 40 stories below SWORD's orbital station, in a Manhattan penthouse that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine received Brand's encrypted message with a smile that would have made her subordinates nervous. The Contessa, as some called her, had built a career on identifying useful people and bringing them into her orbit, willingly or otherwise. Starlight, multiversal refugee, powers, trauma, distrust of institutions. Perfect. Valentina pulled up everything her intelligence network had gathered, which was considerably more than SWORD's official channels had accessed. The boy's universe, a reality where superheroes were corporate products manufactured through compound V injections. Vought International The Seven, Homelander's psychological profile, clinical narcissism with homicidal tendencies. And most interestingly, Starlight's public history. Sexual assault survivor who'd gone public. Whistleblower against corporate corruption. Moral idealist struggling to maintain principles in a system designed to crush them. The woman was a walking case study in someone who desperately wanted to do the right thing, but had been systematically failed by every institution she trusted. "Julia," Valentina said into her comm, summoning her assistant. "Clear my schedule for tomorrow. I'm going to Hell's Kitchen." "Hell's Kitchen, ma'am? That's rather street level for your usual operations. I'm recruiting someone who doesn't respond to official channels." Valentina studied Starlight's image. Blonde, photogenic, the kind of face that photographed well for propaganda. But the eyes told a different story. This woman had seen behind the curtain and couldn't unsee it. Sometimes the best assets are the ones who think they're too broken to be useful. Annie had spent the morning learning investigative basics from Jessica Jones, who taught through a combination of brutal honesty and obvious expertise. By afternoon, her brain hurt from the sheer amount of practical knowledge Jessica had downloaded. Surveillance techniques, evidence documentation, legal frameworks that actually protected victims instead of corporations. "You're a quick study," Jessica said, reviewing Annie's photographs of the trafficking operation with professional approval. "Most superpowered types think investigation work is beneath them. All punch, no research." "I had a boyfriend who did this kind of work," Annie said quietly, "against Voight. He taught me to gather evidence before acting." "Smart boyfriend?" Jessica saved the files to an encrypted drive. "He in your universe still?" "Yeah." The ache of missing Huey hit hard. "I don't even know if I can get back. The breach just happened. Reality tore open and I fell through." Jessica's expression softened fractionally, a rare occurrence. "For what it's worth, you're handling it better than most would. Waking up in a strange universe, no support network, every instinct screaming not to trust anyone. You could have gone full supervillain, started making demands, taking what you needed by force." "The thought crossed my mind," Annie admitted, "but I've seen what happens when people with power stop caring about consequences. Homelander killed a plane full of people because saving them was inconvenient. Just let them die, and Vought covered it up. Jesus Christ. He's supposed to be the world's greatest hero." Annie's hands clenched. "Children dress up as him for Halloween. His approval rating is higher than the president's. And he's a sociopathic murderer who could snap and kill millions if his ego gets bruised hard enough." Before Jessica could respond, the office door opened. A woman in an impeccably tailored suit walked in without knocking, carrying herself with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Dark hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a smile that didn't reach those eyes. "Jessica Jones," the woman said pleasantly. "And you must be Annie January. I'm Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. I represent certain interests that would very much like to speak with you." Annie's light flared instinctively. Jessica stood, placing herself between Annie and Valentina with practiced ease. "Contessa, didn't know you made house calls to street-level investigations." "I don't, usually. But Ms. January represents a unique opportunity." Valentina's gaze fixed on Annie with laser focus. "A hero with genuine principles who's seen the dark side of institutional heroism. Someone who understands that sometimes the official channels are part of the problem, not the solution." "Get out of my office," Jessica said flatly. "In a moment." Valentina pulled out a tablet, set it on Jessica's desk. The screen showed footage Annie had never seen. Vote Tower interior, board meetings, Homelander's private quarters. "I have access to intelligence about your home universe. Information about the Seven, about Vote's operations, about certain people you care about. The man who taught you to investigate, for instance. Huey Campbell, currently working with a group called The Boys to expose Vote from the inside." Annie's heart stopped. "How do you have that?" "Because I make it my business to know everything about assets I'm interested in." Valentina's smile widened. "Multiversal breaches leave echoes, Miss January. Data fragments, information spillover. I've got analysts who specialize in extracting intelligence from dimensional tiers. I know more about your universe than you might expect." "What do you want?" Annie's voice came out harder than she intended. "To make you an offer. Sword wants to detain you, study you, treat you like a lab specimen. Sam Wilson wants to rehabilitate you into a proper Avenger, all heroic sacrifice and institutional oversight. I'm offering something different." Valentina leaned forward. "Freedom, resources, the ability to operate without cameras, without committees, without anyone telling you that your trauma needs to serve their narrative." Jessica's jaw tightened. "She's recruiting you for the Thunderbolts. Deniable assets who do the dirty work that official heroes can't be seen doing. I prefer to call it pragmatic heroism." Valentina didn't deny it. "The world is complicated, Miss January. Sometimes stopping the bad guys requires methods that don't photograph well. You understand that better than most. You've seen what happens when heroism becomes performative instead of effective. Annie stared at the tablet, at images of Huey looking exhausted but determined. The temptation was real. Access to information about her home universe, freedom from oversight, the ability to operate on her own terms. Everything Vought had never given her, but she'd learned to recognize manipulation. Valentina's offer was everything she wanted to hear, which meant it was probably too good to be true. "What's the catch?" Annie asked. "The catch is that you work for me. Missions I assign, targets I select. You get autonomy in methods, but not in objectives." Valentina's honesty was almost refreshing. "I won't lie to you or pretty it up. You'd be an asset, not a partner. But you'd be an asset who gets to use her powers for actual good instead of corporate branding." "She'd be a weapon," Jessica interjected, "pointed at whoever the Contessa wants eliminated or controlled. That's not heroism, that's mercenary work with a conscience-salving veneer." Valentina shrugged elegantly. "Ms. Jones is entitled to her opinion, but she also works outside official channels when it suits her, takes morally gray cases, and has killed in self-defense. The only difference between her work and what I'm offering you is that I'm honest about the moral compromises involved." Annie looked between them, Jessica's protective anger and Valentina's calculated recruitment pitch. Both women represented different paths forward. Jessica's way meant learning, growing, building something genuine, even if it was slow and frustrating. Valentina's way meant power, information, immediate results. In her universe, she'd spent months trapped between those same options. Stay with the Seven and compromise daily, or burn it all down and potentially cause more harm than good. She'd chosen a third path, expose the truth while maintaining her principles, no matter how hard it got. "No," Annie said quietly. Valentina's eyebrow raised fractionally. "No? I've had enough of people who promise freedom while holding invisible leashes." Annie stood, meeting Valentina's gaze directly. "You're just Vought with better marketing. At least Ashley was honest about owning me?" For a moment, genuine surprise crossed Valentina's face. Then she smiled, this time with what might have been actual respect. "Interesting. Most people in your position would have taken the deal, especially with leverage like information about their home universe." "Then they're smarter than me." Annie's hands glowed faintly, or more broken. "I came to this universe running from exactly what you're offering. I'm not trading one corporate master for another, even if this one speaks with a nicer accent." Valentina collected her tablet with unhurried grace. "The offer remains open, should you change your mind. And Ms. January? That information about your universe? About Huey Campbell and the boys? I'll be analyzing it regardless. If I find anything particularly useful, I'll use it. That's not a threat, just reality. Information has value and I don't waste valuable assets." She left as smoothly as she'd entered, leaving a silence that Jessica broke with a low whistle. "Well, that was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've seen this week." Jessica poured herself a drink, offered one to Annie. She wasn't bluffing about the intelligence. If Contessa has multiversal data on your universe, she'll absolutely exploit it. "I know." Annie accepted the glass with shaking hands. "But I can't become someone's weapon again. I did that with Vought, convinced myself I was helping people while they used me for profit and propaganda. If I start down that road here, what's the point of escaping?" Jessica clinked her glass against Annie's. "Welcome to the Stubborn Idealist Club. Membership dues are paid in regret, in bad decision-making, but at least you can look yourself in the mirror." Annie took a drink, the alcohol burning warmth down her throat. "Think I made an enemy?" "Valentina doesn't do enemies. She does calculations. You're more useful as a potential future asset than a current threat." Jessica's expression grew serious. "But she wasn't wrong about one thing. Sword will come for you eventually. They can't let a multiversal breach survivor operate unchecked. And when they do, Sam's protection only goes so far. Then I'd better figure out how to prove I'm not a threat before they decide to make it official." Annie set down her glass. "Where do we start?" Jessica's smile was sharp. We start by making you so valuable to the street-level community that official channels can't touch you without political blowback. If you're embedded with the people, helping neighborhoods that Avengers don't have time for, you become harder to disappear. She pulled up a map on her computer. Hell's Kitchen, Harlem, Brooklyn, places where real people need help that doesn't come with a press conference. You want to earn trust in this universe? Start at the bottom and work up. Annie studied the map, thinking of all the times the Seven had ignored street-level crime because it didn't generate enough media value. The people Vought considered beneath notice because saving them didn't move merchandise. Okay, she said, let's get to work. As the sun set over Hell's Kitchen, Annie January made her choice. Not Sword's detention, not Valentina's leash, not even the Avengers' well-meaning oversight. She'd build her own path, one saved life at a time, proving through actions instead of words that she deserved to exist in this universe. And if that meant rejecting every shortcut and easy answer, so be it. She'd spent too long taking the path of least resistance in Vaught's machine. This time, she'd do it right, even if it killed her. 3 weeks of street-level heroism had taught Annie January more about genuine impact than 4 years with the Seven ever had. No cameras, no scripts, no Ashley screaming about approval ratings through an earpiece. Just her, Hell's Kitchen's darkness, and the slow, grinding work of actually helping people. She'd stopped a bodega robbery on 48th Street. No fatalities. Perpetrator zip-tied for police. Owner's gratitude genuine instead of staged. She'd pulled a family from a burning tenement in Harlem, coordinating with firefighters instead of grandstanding for photos. She'd helped Daredevil dismantle a protection racket targeting immigrant-owned businesses, learning that sometimes heroism meant hours of surveillance, followed by strategic evidence placement for authorities. The work was unglamorous, exhausting, and more fulfilling than anything Vought had ever assigned her. But it also made her visible. Invisibility brought complications. The news coverage started small, local blogs, neighborhood social media groups sharing shaky phone footage of new hero with light powers helping in Hell's Kitchen. Then someone connected her to the NYPD body cam footage from her arrival, posted side-by-side comparisons, and suddenly her Starlight was trending on social media. Annie watched the metrics climb from Jessica's office, feeling her stomach twist with familiar dread. In her universe, trending meant Vaught's PR machine kicking into gear, scripting her responses, manufacturing her personality for maximum engagement. Here, she had no handler, no corporate filter. Here, she was just herself, and the public was forming opinions without anyone controlling the narrative. "You're going viral," Jessica said, scrolling through her phone with professional detachment. "Mostly positive. People like that, you're helping neighborhoods the Avengers don't prioritize. Some speculation about where you came from. And of course, the inevitable comparisons." "Comparisons to what?" Jessica turned her screen. The headline read, "New light-based hero, second coming of Captain Marvel or corporate plant." Annie's hands clenched. Carol Danvers. She'd learned about Captain Marvel over the past weeks. Cosmic-level hero, binary powers, saved the universe more than once. Literally glowed with photon energy. The visual similarities were superficial, but the internet loved surface-level comparisons. "I'm nothing like Captain Marvel," Annie said quietly. "She's a legitimate hero. I'm just trying to figure out how to be useful." "Yeah, well, the internet doesn't do nuance." Jessica poured coffee, strong and bitter. "But here's the thing. Public attention means pressure on Sword to either recruit you or neutralize you. You can't stay under the radar anymore. So you've got a choice. Control the narrative or let it control you." Before Annie could respond, her encrypted comm, the one Sam had given her, buzzed. His voice came through tense. "Annie, we need to talk. In person. Now. Sending coordinates." 20 minutes later, Annie landed on a rooftop in Brooklyn where Sam waited with Bucky, both looking grim. The Statue of Liberty was visible in the distance, torch raised against the darkening sky. "What's wrong?" Annie asked, her instincts screaming that this wasn't a social call. Sam handed her a tablet. "Swords director Brand contacted me an hour ago. She's invoking the Sokovia Accords, demanding you register as an enhanced individual or face detention. Annie's blood ran cold. The Sokovia Accords? International treaty requiring enhanced individuals to register with government oversight, Bucky explained, his tone suggesting personal experience with bureaucratic overreach. Theoretically voluntary, practically mandatory if you want to operate openly, Steve Rogers fought a civil war over them. They were partially repealed after the blip, Sam continued, but swords using a loophole. Multiversal entities fall under different regulations. Brand's argument is that you represent an unknown variable from another reality, potentially carrying pathogens, unstable energy signatures, or information that could be weaponized. That's insane. I'm not a weapon. Annie's light flared involuntarily. I've been helping people. 3 weeks of actual heroism, no incidents, no collateral damage. I know, and I told Brand exactly that. Sam's expression was sympathetic but troubled. But she's got political pressure from above. The UN's nervous about multiversal breaches after what happened with the Scarlet Witch. They want containment protocols, oversight, guarantees that you're not a threat. So what? I submit to registration? Let them track my every move? Assign me missions? Turn me into exactly what I was running from? The panic was rising, memories of Volt's control flooding back. I won't. I can't. Then you've got 48 hours before Sword issues an arrest warrant. Sam said it gently, but the weight was crushing. And Annie, I can't protect you from that. Not officially. Captain America defying Sword would cause an international incident. Bucky stepped forward. Unofficially, though, we didn't have this conversation. And if someone were to, hypothetically, help you disappear until we can figure out a legal workaround, well, I've got experience being a fugitive. Annie looked between them, Sam's conflicted loyalty to both her and his responsibilities as Captain America. Bucky's quiet offer of rebellion. These men barely knew her, yet they were willing to risk their reputations, their standing, to give her options. Why? She asked, voice breaking slightly. Why help me? You don't owe me anything. Because I've seen what happens when good people get crushed by institutions more concerned with control than justice, Sam said firmly. The Sokovia Accords tore the Avengers apart, forced Steve Rogers into exile, turned heroes into fugitives for refusing to be government weapons. I won't watch that happen again if there's another way. And because you remind me of someone, Bucky added quietly, guy named Steve who refused to compromise his principles even when the whole world told him he was wrong. Stubborn bastard usually turned out to be right. Annie's comm buzzed again, Jessica this time. Turn on the news, now. Sam pulled up a live feed on his tablet. Annie's stomach dropped. The press conference showed Director Abigail Brand at a podium, Sword logo prominent behind her, addressing a room full of reporters. Confirmed presence of an unregistered enhanced individual of extra-dimensional origin operating in New York City. Sword has attempted peaceful outreach, but the subject, known as Starlight, has refused cooperation. That's a lie, Annie breathed. Sword never approached me. She's building a narrative, Sam said grimly, making you look uncooperative before you even had a chance to respond. Brand continued, in the interest of public safety and multiversal security, Sword is issuing a registration requirement. Starlight has 48 hours to submit to voluntary examination and registration. Failure to comply will result in detainment under international law. The reporters erupted with questions. Brand fielded them with practiced efficiency, painting a picture of Sword as reasonable authority figures dealing with a potentially dangerous unknown variable. Annie felt the walls closing in. This was Vogt's playbook. Control the narrative, make the target look unreasonable, justify whatever came next through manufactured public concern. She'd watch them do it to rivals, to whistleblowers, to anyone who threatened the machine. I have to go public, Annie said suddenly. Tell my story before she defines it for me. That's risky, Sam warned. Once you're out there, Sword can paint anything you say as manipulation or propaganda from a multiversal threat. But at least it's my truth. Annie's mind raced, thinking of all the times she'd wanted to speak freely about Vought, but couldn't. In my universe, I spent months gathering evidence to expose corruption while playing their game. It didn't work. The system protected itself. Maybe here, if I'm honest from the start, show people who I really am instead of letting Sword create a fictional threat. It could backfire spectacularly, Bucky finished. Or it could work. Transparency's a gamble when institutions have power. Sam studied Annie's face, then nodded slowly. If you're going to do this, do it right. Not some amateur video uploaded to YouTube. We give you a platform that can't be easily dismissed or buried. I'll contact a journalist I trust, someone who won't sensationalize or distort. And I'll make sure Jessica and the Hell's Kitchen community have your back publicly, Bucky added. Street-level heroes vouching for you carries weight with people who don't trust government agencies. Annie took a shaky breath. Okay, let's do this. But Sam, I need you to promise me something. What? If this goes wrong, if Sword comes for me anyway, don't sacrifice your position as Captain America trying to protect me. This world needs you as that symbol. I won't let my problems destroy what you've built. Sam's expression softened. Steve once told me that the shield doesn't make you Captain America. Your choices do. And choosing to stand with someone being crushed by institutional overreach? That's exactly what this shield represents. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Christine Everhart? It's Sam Wilson. I've got a story for you, an exclusive that Sword really doesn't want public. As Sam arranged the interview, Annie walked to the roof's edge, looking out over Brooklyn's sprawl. Somewhere in this vast city, Director Brand was mobilizing resources to contain her. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine was probably calculating how to exploit the situation. Sword agents were preparing detainment protocols, and Annie January, refugee from a universe of corporate heroism, was about to bet everything on the radical notion that honesty might actually matter in this reality. Her comm buzzed. Daredevil. Heard about Sword's press conference. Whatever you decide to do, Hell's Kitchen's got your back. You've earned that. Then Jessica, don't let the bastards grind you down. You're one of us now. Messages kept coming. People she'd helped over the past 3 weeks. Street-level heroes she'd worked with. Neighborhood residents who'd seen her pulling people from burning buildings without waiting for cameras. A community forming around her not because of corporate branding or manufactured heroism, but because of genuine action and authentic presence. In her universe, public support had been manufactured, purchased, scripted. Here, she'd earned it the hard way. One saved life, one stopped crime, one night of unglamorous heroism at a time. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe transparency and truth could win against institutional power and manufactured narratives. Or maybe she was about to learn that some systems were too entrenched to fight with honesty alone. Either way, Annie January was done running, done hiding, done letting other people define her story. When's the interview? She asked Sam. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Christine's studio in Manhattan. Sam pocketed his phone. She's tough but fair. Won't softball you, but won't ambush you either. Just be honest, be yourself, and trust that people can see the difference between genuine heroism and manufactured threats. Annie nodded, light flickering around her fingers. Nervous energy seeking outlet. In my universe, honesty got you fired, blacklisted, or killed. I'm really hoping this world works differently. Only one way to find out, Bucky said with a slight smile. Welcome to the Resistance. It's terrifying and occasionally suicidal, but at least you can sleep at night. As the three of them stood on that Brooklyn rooftop, watching the sun set over a city that Annie was starting to think of as home, she made a silent promise. Whatever came next, registration, detainment, public trial, she'd face it as herself. Not as Vort's asset, not as Sword's threat, not as anyone's weapon or tool. Just Annie January, trying to be a hero in a universe that might actually let her succeed. The next 24 hours would determine if that was naive idealism or achievable reality. Christine Everhart's studio was nothing like the Volt media centers Annie remembered. No corporate logos, no branded backdrops, no handlers hovering with approval scripts. Just a professional setup in a Manhattan high-rise. Cameras operated by a small crew who looked at Annie with curiosity rather than calculation. Christine herself was sharp-eyed and direct, the kind of journalist who'd built a career on asking uncomfortable questions to powerful people. She'd famously exposed Stark Industries' weapons dealing, survived attempts to discredit her, and maintain integrity in an industry increasingly controlled by corporate interests. "You understand this goes live," Christine said as they settled into interview chairs. "No edits, no takebacks. Whatever you say, Sword and the public will hear simultaneously." "I understand." Annie's hands were steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "I'm done with controlled narratives." "Good," Christine signaled her crew. "We're live in 60 seconds. Remember, I'm not your friend in this. I'm going to ask hard questions because the public deserves real answers, not PR spin. You ready for that?" Annie thought of every scripted interview, every calculated response designed to maximize engagement while revealing nothing true. "Yeah, I'm ready." The camera light went red. "Good afternoon. I'm Christine Everhart, and today we're speaking with the enhanced individual known as Starlight, who Sword Director Abigail Brand identified yesterday as an unregistered multiversal entity requiring government oversight." Christine turned to Annie. "Let's start simple. Who are you and why are you in our universe?" Annie took a breath. "My name is Annie January. I'm from a parallel Earth, universe designation unknown, where superheroes exist, but they're not what people think. In my world, powers come from a drug called Compound V, manufactured by a corporation called Vault International. They inject babies with it, create superheroes, then monetize us as entertainment products. You're saying heroes in your universe are corporate assets? We're brands, merchandise, IP. Vought owns us legally and practically." Annie's voice steadied as she spoke truth instead of script. "The Seven, that's the premier superhero team. We don't fight real crime or save actual people unless it generates revenue. Most of our heroic acts are staged. The real disasters we stop get buried if they don't photograph well." Christine's expression remained neutral, professional. "That's a serious accusation. Can you prove it?" "Not here. All my evidence is in another universe." Annie met the camera directly. "But I can tell you what I experienced. I was sexually assaulted during my initiation into the Seven by a member called the Deep. Vaught's legal team made me sign an NDA, forced me to continue working with my rapist, and threatened my career if I went public. That's not heroism. That's human trafficking with capes." The studio was silent except for camera operation. Christine's eyes narrowed slightly. Not disbelief, but journalist instinct recognizing a significant story. "Why should anyone believe you? Sword's position is that you're an unknown variable from another reality, potentially dangerous, refusing reasonable oversight. Because I've spent 3 weeks in Hell's Kitchen helping people without cameras or publicity," Annie said firmly. "Ask the bodega owner on 48th Street whose store I saved from armed robbery. Ask the family I pulled from the tenement fire in Harlem. Ask Daredevil or Jessica Jones, street-level heroes who've actually worked with me, whether I'm a threat or someone trying to do genuine good. You're comparing yourself to unsanctioned vigilantes," Christine pointed out. "Sword's argument is that enhanced individuals, especially those from other universes, require oversight for public safety. The Sokovia Accords exist for a reason. The Sokovia Accords were created after enhanced individuals caused collateral damage," Annie countered. "I haven't caused any damage. I've saved lives, gathered evidence for police, coordinated with local authorities. Sword never approached me peacefully. Their first contact was a public ultimatum demanding registration or detention. Director Brand claims they attempted outreach. Then she's lying." Annie's light flared involuntarily, and she consciously dimmed it. "I've received 0 official contact from Sword. Sam Wilson, Captain America, reached out personally as a civilian gesture. Jessica Jones made contact as a private citizen. Sword's peaceful outreach is revisionist history designed to justify detainment." Christine leaned forward. "Let's talk about your powers. What exactly can you do, and do you pose a threat to this universe?" "I manipulate light, generate photonic energy, create blasts, fly, enhance durability and moderate super strength," Annie demonstrated by creating a soft glow around her hand. "My power level is significantly below cosmic tier heroes like Captain Marvel. I'm street level, maybe city level at maximum output. The idea that I'm a multiversal threat is absurd when this universe has survived Thanos, Ultron, and reality-warping Scarlet Witches. Yet you refuse to register with Sword and submit to examination. Why? This was the critical moment. Annie could deflect, minimize, play it safe, or she could tell the truth and trust that it mattered. Because I've already been registered, examined, controlled, and exploited by a powerful institution that claimed it was for my own good and public safety, Annie said, voice raw. Vought International owned me legally. They tracked my every movement, scripted my every word, threatened me when I stepped out of line. Registration sounds reasonable until you've experienced what institutions do with that power when nobody's watching. So you're comparing Sword to this Vought corporation? I'm saying that any system demanding total control over enhanced individuals while operating without accountability creates the conditions for abuse. Annie chose her words carefully. I'm not saying Sword is evil. I'm saying I've learned to question institutional power that demands trust without earning it. Christine studied her for a long moment. You understand that refusing registration likely means detention. Sword has legal authority under international law to contain multiversal anomalies. What's your plan? I don't have one, Annie admitted. I'm not running, I'm not fighting. I'm just asking for the chance to prove through actions instead of forced compliance that I deserve to exist here. Give me oversight that doesn't require surrendering my autonomy. Assign a liaison from the Avengers, require regular check-ins, monitor my activities transparently. But don't lock me in a cell for the crime of being born in the wrong universe. And if Sword refuses those terms? Annie's jaw set. Then I guess we'll all find out whether this universe actually values freedom and earn trust, or whether it's just better at marketing institutional control than my world was. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, Christine asking pointed questions about Annie's universe, her powers, her intentions, her experiences with Vought. Annie answered honestly, completely, holding nothing back. No spin, no calculated responses, just raw truth from someone who'd spent too long living in manufactured reality. When the cameras finally stopped, Christine sat back with an appraising look. That was either career suicide or the smartest play you could have made. We'll see which in about 6 hours when Sword responds. Thank you for the platform, Annie said quietly. Whatever happens next, at least people heard the truth. The truth is a weapon, Ms. January. Let's hope you aimed it correctly. Christine stood, offering her hand. Off the record? I believe you. I've seen too many powerful institutions abuse reasonable-sounding oversight to dismiss your concerns. But belief doesn't stop arrest warrants. Annie shook her hand, then left the studio to find Sam and Bucky waiting outside with Jessica Jones, and surprisingly, Matt Murdock in civilian clothes. That was ballsy, Jessica said without preamble. Publicly calling Sword liars, comparing registration to corporate slavery. Either you just won public opinion or handed Brand the justification she needs to detain you as unstable. We'll know soon enough, Sam said, checking his phone. Interview's already trending. Public response is mixed. People sympathetic to your story, others saying you're manipulating emotions, some calling for immediate detention. Matt tilted his head, listening to something the others couldn't hear. Sword scrambling. I can hear emergency meetings convening in their New York facility. They didn't expect you to go public this effectively. Good, Annie said, surprised by her own defiance. Let them scramble. I'm tired of powerful people making decisions about my life without my input. Her encrypted comm buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Ms. January. Director Abigail Brand's voice was cold, controlled fury. That was an impressive performance. Emotional, sympathetic, calculated to generate public support while undermining Sword's authority. It was the truth, Annie replied, not a performance. The truth is that you're a multiversal entity with unknown capabilities refusing legal oversight. The truth is that your cooperation could provide valuable intelligence about dimensional breaches and prevent future catastrophic incidents. But instead, you chose to weaponize victimhood and turn this into a public spectacle. Annie's temper flared. I chose to tell my story before you could bury me in a black site while telling the public it was for their safety. Don't lecture me about weaponizing victimhood when you're using security theater to justify institutional overreach. Silence on the line. Then Brand spoke with careful precision. You forced my hand. Sword agents are moving to detain you now. I advise you to surrender peacefully. Director Brand, Sam interjected, having moved close enough to hear. This is Captain America. I'm asking you to stand down and give us time to negotiate a reasonable compromise. Ms. January has demonstrated good faith. Captain Wilson, with respect, this is outside Avengers jurisdiction. SWORD operates under UN authority on multiversal matters. I have legal backing and executive support. The detention order is already active. Matt's expression sharpened. Multiple vehicles approaching, armed personnel, SWORD tactical team, approximately 3 blocks out and closing fast. Annie's light flared instinctively as adrenaline spiked. The people on the street around them noticed. Phones came out, people backing away or moving closer with equal curiosity. Within seconds, they'd have an audience of hundreds. Annie, Sam said urgently, you've got seconds to decide. Run and become a fugitive. Fight and prove Brand's narrative that you're dangerous. Or surrender and trust the legal system to sort this out. Some legal system, Jessica muttered. They'll bury you in a cell for months while lawyers argue jurisdiction. Or you could disappear, Bucky added quietly. I know places SWORD can't reach. Safe houses, off-grid locations. Becoming a fugitive worked for me for decades. And look how well that turned out, Sam shot back. Annie looked at the approaching vehicles, at her friends offering impossible choices, at the phones recording this moment for immediate upload to social media. In her universe, this was where Vought would have scripted her surrender with maximum dramatic impact and minimum genuine consequence. This universe didn't have scripts, just choices with real irreversible outcomes. SWORD vehicles screeched to a halt. Agents emerged wearing tactical gear, weapons trained but not firing, civilians scattered or filmed with equal enthusiasm. Director Brand's voice came over a loudspeaker. Annie January, designated Starlight, you are required to surrender for registration and examination under UN Multiversal Security Protocol 7. Comply immediately or force will be authorized. Annie raised her hands, light building around them, not aggressive, but visible, making a choice that felt terrifyingly right. I'll surrender, she called out loudly, addressing the cameras as much as SWORD. Peacefully, without resistance, but I'm doing it publicly, with witnesses, so everyone can see exactly what happens when someone from another universe asks for dignity instead of detention. She turned to Sam. Document everything. Make sure they can't disappear me. Sam nodded grimly. You have my word. As SWORD agents moved forward with power suppression cuffs, Annie January walked toward them with her head high, light still glowing around her hands as a quiet reminder that she was choosing this, not being forced. The cameras captured everything. A young woman in a torn costume surrendering to armed agents, while a crowd of New Yorkers watched, many shouting support, others silent. Captain America standing witness. Jessica Jones filming on her phone. Daredevil listening with perfect attention to ensure no violence occurred off camera. And somewhere in an orbital station, director Abigail Brand watched the footage with the sinking realization that she'd just created exactly the kind of public spectacle she'd wanted to avoid. Annie January, Starlight, was now the face of institutional overreach versus individual liberty, and the world was watching to see which value would win. The SWORD detention facility was located in an undisclosed location somewhere in upstate New York. At least, that's what Annie had been told during the helicopter ride from Manhattan. They'd stripped her of the comm device Sam had given her, confiscated her costume, and dressed her in a gray jumpsuit that screamed prisoner more than voluntary examination subject. The cell was clean, clinical, and utterly impersonal. White walls, reinforced glass partition, monitoring cameras in every corner, a bed, toilet, and sink. Nothing sharp, nothing that could be used as a weapon or tool. The kind of space designed to contain and dehumanize simultaneously. Annie sat on the bed, forcing herself to breathe steadily. Panic wouldn't help. Rage wouldn't help. She'd made her choice. Public surrender, documented process, trusting that visibility would protect her from the worst abuses. Now she had to see it through. The door opened. Director Abigail Brand entered, flanked by two agents who remained by the entrance. Brand carried a tablet and wore an expression of professional detachment that Annie recognized from every Void executive meeting she'd endured. "Ms. January," Brand said, sitting in the room's single chair across from the bed. "I'm sure you have questions. I'll answer what I can within security parameters." "How long am I being held?" Annie asked flatly. "That depends on your cooperation with examination and questioning." Brand activated her tablet, pulled up files. "We need to understand your capabilities, your universe of origin, the mechanics of your breach, and whether you pose a security risk. I've already explained all of that publicly. You've provided a narrative. We need verifiable data." Brand's tone remained neutral. "Medical scans to establish your biological baseline, power testing to measure output and control, psychological evaluation to assess stability, and extensive debriefing about your home universe's technologies and capabilities." Annie's jaw tightened. "That sounds like indefinite detention with scientific justification." "It's standard protocol for extra-dimensional entities." Brand leaned forward slightly. "Ms. January, I understand your distrust of institutions. Your interview was very effective at generating sympathy. Public opinion is split roughly 60-40 in your favor, and several congressional representatives are already demanding hearings. You've created a political complication. Good. Not from my perspective." Brand's professional mask slipped fractionally, revealing frustration beneath. "I'm trying to protect this universe from multiversal threats. The Scarlet Witch's reality manipulation, the multiverse incursion that nearly destroyed everything, the chaos that America Chavez's existence created. These aren't theoretical dangers. They're recent history. You appeared through an unexplained breach, wielding powers derived from an unknown substance called Compound Phi, and I'm supposed to just trust that you're benign?" "I've done nothing to suggest otherwise," Annie shot back. 3 weeks of documented heroism. 0 incidents, 0 casualties. I've been more careful and responsible than half the registered heroes in this universe. Until yesterday, when you publicly undermined Sword's authority and painted us as authoritarian villains." Brand's eyes narrowed. "That interview was calculated to force our hand, make detention look like oppression rather than legitimate security protocol. It was honesty, not everything is a calculated move." Annie stood, the frustration finally boiling over. "In my universe, I spent months playing political games with Vought, trying to expose them through careful strategy and evidence gathering. It didn't work. The system protected itself. So here I'm trying something different. Radical transparency and trusting that people can tell the difference between genuine heroism and institutional power protecting its own interests." Brand was silent for a long moment. Then she set down her tablet. "You want honesty? Here it is. I don't think you're malicious. I think you're traumatized, displaced, and genuinely trying to help people. But my job isn't to evaluate individual intentions, it's to assess systemic risks. Your existence here means the barriers between universes are compromised. If you can fall through, what else might follow?" The question hit harder than Annie expected because it was legitimate. "You think something from my universe could come through after me? I think it's possible, probable even. Multiversal breaches rarely happen in isolation." Brand pulled up holographic displays showing energy signatures, dimensional readings. "The tear you came through left a residual signature. It's healing, but slowly. And while it remains even partially open, there's risk of additional crossover." Annie's blood ran cold. "What kind of crossover?" "Unknown. Could be individuals, objects, energy phenomena. In worst-case scenarios, entire dimensional bleeding where realities start overlapping." Brand's expression was grave. "That's why I need your cooperation, Ms. January. Not to punish you or control you, but to understand the threat vector you represent and mitigate it before something catastrophic happens." Before Annie could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lighting activated. Brand's comm crackled with urgent voices. "Director, we have a situation. Multiple energy signatures breaching dimensional barrier. Same profile as Starlight's entry point. Location, Manhattan, Times Square." Brand's face went pale. She stood, already moving toward the door. "How many signatures?" 7 distinct entities, power levels. Director, they're massive, comparable to Thor-class capabilities or higher. Annie's heart stopped. 7 entities, from her universe. The implications hit like a physical blow. "It's the 7, she whispered. "They've found the breach. They've come through." Brand spun to face her. "The 7? Your universe's superhero team? They're not heroes." Annie's voice shook with fear and rage. "They're monsters with good PR. Homelander alone could level Manhattan if he wanted to. And if Vought sent them through..." She couldn't finish the thought. Vought International with access to another universe. Another Earth to exploit and monetize. The damage they could cause was incomprehensible. Brand made a split-second decision. "Release her. Now." The agents by the door hesitated. "Director, protocol. Override all protocols. Authorization, Brand 07 Alpha." The cell's electronic lock disengaged. Brand grabbed Annie's arm. Not roughly, but urgently. "You know these people. Their capabilities, psychology, weaknesses. I need everything you know. And I need it now while we're mobilizing response teams." Annie pulled her arm free. "You want my cooperation? Give me my costume back and let me help stop them. Not as your prisoner or asset, as a partner." "You don't have leverage to negotiate." "Yes, I do." Annie's light flared, bright enough to cast harsh shadows. "You said it yourself. Thor-class power levels. Your response teams will get slaughtered if Homelander decides to stop playing nice. But I know how he thinks, what triggers him, how to manipulate his ego. I've spent years learning how to survive the 7. Let me use that knowledge, or watch your agents die trying to contain something they don't understand." Brand's jaw clenched. The calculation was visible in her eyes. Pride versus pragmatism, protocol versus necessity. The alarms continued wailing, each second bringing the 7 closer to civilian populations. "Fine. Conditional partnership for this crisis only." Brand pulled out her comm. "Agent Torres, bring Starlight, her costume and equipment. Full access restoration." She turned back to Annie. "But Miss January, understand this. If you're lying, if this is some elaborate scheme, I will personally ensure you never see freedom again." "I'm not lying." Annie's hands shook as adrenaline and terror mixed. "I'm terrified. Homelander is a narcissistic psychopath with God-level powers and 0 genuine empathy. If he's here, people will die. A lot of people." Minutes later, back in her costume with her encrypted comm restored, Annie stood in SWORD's command center watching holographic displays of Times Square. The imagery was chaos. 7 figures in distinctive costumes materializing amid panicking civilians. She recognized each one instantly. Homelander, blue and red with American flag cape, standing in the center like a conquering god surveying new territory. His smile visible even from satellite footage. The smile that never reached his dead eyes. Queen Maeve, armor and sword, looking around with barely concealed disgust, but standing with the 7 anyway. The deep, aquatic-themed costume, ridiculous as always. Expression suggesting he was terrified and overcompensating. A-Train, speedster in blue and silver, vibrating with barely contained energy. Black Noir, silent and armored, a weapon waiting to be pointed. Translucent. No, wait, that wasn't right. Translucent was dead. Annie had seen the aftermath, but there he was on the screens. Invisible shimmer moving through the crowd. And finally Stormfront. Annie's stomach dropped. The Nazi soup who'd infiltrated the 7, manipulated Homelander, and nearly destroyed everything Annie had tried to build. Vought must have rehabilitated her image, brought her back into the fold. "That's them," Annie said, voice hollow. "The 7, Vought International's premier superhero team and the most dangerous collection of enhanced narcissists you'll ever encounter." Director Brand studied the footage with cold, tactical assessment. "Power profiles?" Annie took a breath, forcing herself into analytical mode. "Homelander, flight, super strength comparable to Thor, heat vision that can slice through almost anything, enhanced hearing and X-ray vision, invulnerable to conventional weapons, psychologically unstable, God complex, will kill anyone who challenges his supremacy. Countermeasures? His ego. He needs adulation, worship. Public humiliation enrages him, but also makes him sloppy. Annie's mind raced through years of watching Homelander's patterns. He's never faced real opposition. Everyone in our universe either fears him or enables him. Genuine resistance might throw him off balance. What about the others? Queen Maeve, super strength, durability, combat training. Disillusioned alcoholic who hates Homelander, but goes along because she's given up hope. Might be turned if offered genuine alternative. Annie continued through the roster. A-Train's speed addiction in desperate need for relevance. The Deep's pathetic attempt to maintain status, despite everyone knowing he's worthless. Black Noir's silent efficiency and complete obedience to Vought. Translucent's invisibility and diamond-hard skin. And Stormfront? Brand asked, something in her tone suggesting she'd picked up on Annie's visceral reaction to that name. Nazi. Actual, literal Nazi from the 1940s. Enhanced by early compound 5 experiments, doesn't age. Manipulative, racist, fascist ideology wrapped in social media-savvy populism. Annie's hands clenched. She and Homelander together are a nightmare combination. His power and her ideology, both feeding each other's worst impulses. Brand processed this with the efficiency of someone who dealt with Hydra infiltrations and Red Skull. Noted. What's their likely objective here? Before Annie could answer, Homelander's voice boomed across Times Square. Amplified somehow. Probably the Seven's tech support team setting up sound systems. The holographic display showed him hovering 20 feet above the crowd, cape billowing, every inch the hero god. People of Earth! His smile was bright, empty, terrifying. Don't be afraid. We're the Seven, the greatest superheroes in the multiverse. We've come to help protect your world and spread Vought International's message of hope and heroism across realities. Annie's blood turned to ice. They're not here to attack. They're here to market. Vaught's expanding into the multiverse. Brand's expression showed she immediately grasped the horrifying implications. Corporate superhero branding with multiversal reach. And if this universe's heroes try to stop them, Homelander will frame it as local villains opposing benevolent saviors. Annie watched Homelander work the crowd with practiced ease. The civilians' fear slowly transforming into confused curiosity under his charismatic performance. Vaught's probably already planning merchandising deals, movie franchises, licensing agreements. They'll monetize this entire reality. Over my dead body, Brand said flatly. She activated facility-wide comms. All units, Manhattan mobilization. I want every available agent and authorized hero in Times Square within 15 minutes. Full tactical deployment. And someone get me Captain America, Thor, and whoever else we can field immediately. Annie grabbed Brand's arm. If you attack the Seven publicly, you'll look like the aggressors. Homelander will play the victim. Vaught's media machine will crucify you. And they'll win public opinion before the first punch lands. Then what do you suggest? Annie thought of every battle she'd fought against Vought, the ones she'd won and the ones that had crushed her. We need to expose them before they can establish their narrative. Show this universe what the Seven really are. And I know exactly who can help us do that. She activated her encrypted comm, praying the signal would reach. Sam, I need the Avengers. Not for a fight, for a press conference. We're going to destroy the Seven the way they destroyed me. With the truth, Times Square had become a circus. The Seven stood at its center like conquering gods. Homelander orchestrating the spectacle with the practiced ease of someone who'd performed heroism thousands of times without ever meaning it. News helicopters circled overhead. Crowds pressed against police barriers, phones raised, filming everything. Vaught's media team, somehow already present, which told Annie they'd planned this invasion meticulously, distributed branded merchandise and coordinated photo opportunities. It was a perfect corporate superhero deployment, and it made Annie want to vomit. She stood on a rooftop 6 blocks away with Sam Wilson, Bucky Barnes, and Jessica Jones, watching the holographic feeds Director Brand transmitted to their secure devices. SWORD had agents positioned throughout the area, weapons trained but not engaging. The Avengers were en route, those who remained after the blip in Endgame's devastating losses. They're treating it like a product launch, Sam said, voice tight with controlled anger. Selling themselves to our universe like a franchise expansion. That's exactly what it is, Annie replied. Vaught's business model requires constant growth. They've saturated our Earth. Every market captured, every demographic monetized. A whole new universe? That's trillion-dollar potential. And Homelander? Jessica watched the feeds with professional assessment. He's putting on a hell of a show, saving cats from trees, signing autographs, playing the benevolent god. Public's eating it up. Annie watched Homelander lift a child onto his shoulders for a photo, his smile bright and empty. She knew that smile, had seen it deployed strategically in thousands of situations. Beneath it was a yawning void of genuine empathy, a creature that viewed humans as ants, occasionally useful, mostly irrelevant, always beneath him. He'll maintain the facade until he doesn't need to, she said quietly. First crisis that challenges his ego or threatens his supremacy, he'll show what he really is. Problem is, by then, Vought will have established legal presence here, signed contracts, bought political influence. They're not invading, they're colonizing through capitalism. Then we hit them before they can establish that foothold, Sam said. He activated his comm. Brand, what's our timeline for the press conference? Director Brand's voice came through crisp and urgent. 30 minutes. I've got major networks demanding access. This is the biggest story since the blip reversal. Captain Wilson, I need you to understand the political delicacy here. If the Avengers attack extra-dimensional visitors who appear to be helping people, it looks like territorial aggression. We're not attacking, Sam replied. We're exposing. There's a difference. Annie's encrypted comm buzzed, an unknown number from her universe's signature. Her heart stopped. She answered cautiously. Hello? Starlight. Huey's voice strained and desperate, barely above a whisper. Oh God, Annie, please tell me this is really you. Tears stung her eyes immediately. Huey, how are you? The breach is still partially open. We've got tech from a Vought lab, something they were developing for dimensional exploration. I can talk for maybe 2 minutes before they detect the signal. He spoke rapidly, urgently. Annie, you have to stop them. Homelander convinced Vought's board that expanding into parallel Earths was the next evolution of the brand. They sent the Seven through with full corporate backing. Lawyers, media teams, everything. This is a colonization mission. I know, we're working on it. Annie's mind raced. Huey, I need evidence. Something I can show this universe that proves what the Seven really are. Do you have anything? Butcher grabbed files before the Seven deployed. Security footage of Homelander killing civilians, Vaught's internal memos about covering up atrocities, financial records showing bribery and blackmail. I'm sending everything through the breach now. Compressed data burst should reach you in. The signal cut with a harsh squeal. Annie's device beeped, indicating incoming data transfer. Gigabytes of information flooded in. Video files, documents, audio recordings. Years of Vaught's crimes compressed into digital evidence. What was that? Sam asked. Ammunition. Annie pulled up the files, hands shaking. Everything we need to destroy the Seven's narrative before they can establish it. The video files were damning. Homelander using heat vision to slice through a plane full of people because saving them was too complicated. Maeve watching helplessly, her disgust visible. The Seven staging terrorist attacks to boost their approval ratings. Compound Vi being injected into babies in third world countries as test subjects. Stormfront's white supremacist rallies disguised as patriotic events. And the crown jewel, internal Vought board meetings discussing the multiversal expansion like a business merger, explicitly stating their intention to capture the new Earth market before competitors identify the opportunity. Jessica let out a low whistle. This is scorched Earth material. You release this, Vaught's credibility is dead on arrival. And the Seven? Bucky asked. Exposed as the corporate weapons they are. Annie felt grim satisfaction mixing with old pain. These videos represented years of suffering, of knowing the truth while being forced to smile and perform. But we have to be strategic. Drop it all at once during the press conference. Give them no time to spin or deny. Sam nodded. Christine Everhart's already confirmed a moderate. She'll ask the right questions, won't pull punches. He checked the time. 25 minutes. We need to move. As they made their way toward the press conference location, a hastily arranged setup 2 blocks from Times Square, positioned to keep the 7 visible, but not in direct control, Annie felt the weight of what was coming. This wasn't a fight she could win with light blasts or super strength. This was a war of narratives, truth versus propaganda, and she'd lost that war before in her own universe. But here she had allies. Sam Wilson as Captain America carried moral authority. Christine Everhart had credibility that Vogt's media machine couldn't easily dismiss. And most importantly, this universe hadn't been conditioned by decades of Vogt's manipulation to accept corporate heroism as normal. They arrived at the press conference venue to find it already packed with journalists, cameras, and curious civilians. A stage with podium-faced rows of seats and standing room crowds. Director Brand stood off to one side with sword agents, her expression carefully neutral. Christine Everhart checked her notes, radiating professional intensity. And in Times Square, visible on every screen and monitor, the 7 continued their performance. Homelander had started doing aerial demonstrations, flying in complex patterns while the crowd cheered. A-Train was racing around the perimeter, creating wind patterns that spelled hope in debris. It was choreographed, calculated, and sickeningly effective. "We're living 5, Christine announced. She approached Annie, Sam, and Director Brand. "Ground rules: I ask questions, you answer honestly, and we let the evidence speak. This is journalism, not activism. Understood?" "Understood," Annie said. "Good. Because the moment this starts, you're declaring war on a multiversal corporation with unlimited resources and enhanced individuals who could level this city. You sure about this?" Annie thought of every person Homelander had killed. Every child Vought had experimented on, every hero they'd broken and discarded when no longer profitable. "I've never been more sure of anything." The cameras went live. "Good evening, I'm Christine Everhart, and we're here to discuss the arrival of 7 enhanced individuals from a parallel universe calling themselves the 7. Christine stood at the podium, authoritative and direct. "With me are Captain America, Sam Wilson, Sword Director Abigail Brand, and Annie January, known in her universe as Starlight, a former member of the 7. Ms. January, let's start with you. The 7 are presenting themselves as heroes here to help. Are they?" Annie stepped to the microphone, aware of the cameras, the watching world, the magnitude of what she was about to do. "No, they're corporate assets owned by Vought International, a mega corporation that manufactures superheroes through forced compound buy injections and monetizes them as entertainment products. They're not here to help. They're here to expand Vaught's market reach into your universe." "That's a serious accusation. Can you prove it?" "Yes." Annie pulled out her device, transmitted the files to the press conference's display systems. "These are internal Vought documents, security footage, and board meeting recordings from my universe. I'm going to show you exactly what the 7 are." The first video played, Homelander hovering over a hijacked plane, the pilot begging for help. "Please, Homelander, you can save us." Homelander's response cold and dismissive. "Sorry, too complicated. Not good for the brand." Then he flew away, leaving the plane to crash. Every soul aboard died while the 7's leader smiled for distant cameras. The room fell silent. Horror and disbelief radiated from the assembled journalists. Annie didn't stop. She played clip after clip. The 7 staging crimes to boost ratings. Vought covering up civilian deaths. Stormfront's Nazi ideology on full display. A-Train killing an innocent woman and Vought paying off her family with NDAs. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, devastating. "This is what you're seeing in Times Square right now," Annie said, voice steady despite the tears threatening. "Manufactured heroism. They'll save people when cameras are watching, then let thousands die when it's inconvenient or unprofitable. And Vaught's lawyers and media teams are already working to establish legal presence in your universe, so you can't stop them without international incidents." Christine turned to Director Brand. "Director, does Sword have a response to this evidence?" Brand stepped forward, her earlier antagonism toward Annie completely absent now. "Sword's position has changed based on new intelligence. The 7 represent a corporate invasion force, not benevolent visitors. We're prepared to treat this as a multiversal security threat and detain them for immediate deportation. "Captain Wilson," Sam took the microphone, and Annie saw the weight of the shield in his bearing. "The Avengers stand with sword on this. What's happening in Times Square isn't heroism, it's marketing. And speaking as someone who's worn this country's colors, I can tell you that true heroism doesn't require branding, focus groups, or corporate quarterly earnings. It requires sacrifice, genuine care for others, and accountability." He paused. "The Seven have none of those qualities." In Times Square, visible on every monitor, the Seven's performance continued, blissfully unaware that their entire facade was crumbling 6 blocks away. Christine addressed the cameras directly. "We're showing you this evidence because the public deserves to know what's really entering their universe. The Seven are not heroes, they're products, and the corporation that owns them is attempting multiversal colonization through manufactured heroism." Annie watched the press conference feeds spread across social media in real time. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Shock, outrage, demands for the Seven's removal. The carefully constructed narrative Vought had planned to build was destroyed before it could take root. Then her blood turned to ice. On the Times Square feeds, Homelander's head tilted slightly. His smile froze. He was hearing something, probably his handlers through an earpiece, telling him about the press conference, about the evidence, about his perfect invasion plan collapsing. Annie had seen that expression before, right before Homelander stopped pretending to be human. "We need to evacuate Times Square," she said urgently. "Right now. He's about to snap." Sam grabbed his comm. "All units, civilian evacuation protocol. Move." But it was too late. Homelander's eyes glowed red. His smile twisted into something terrible. And when he spoke, his voice carried across Times Square with amplified menace. "Starlight, I know you're out there. I know you're behind this. You always were an ungrateful little bitch." The crowd's cheers died instantly, confusion and fear replacing adulation. "Here's what's going to happen," Homelander continued, rising higher into the air. "You're going to retract everything you just said. You're going to tell these people that you lied, that you're mentally unstable, that the Seven are exactly what we claim to be. Or I start killing them, one person every 10 seconds until you comply." His heat vision lanced out, cutting through a billboard. Debris rained down on panicking civilians. Clocks ticking, Starlight. 10, 9, 8. Annie was already running, light blazing from her hands as she launched skyward toward Times Square. Behind her, she heard Sam activating his wings, Jessica cursing, Bucky checking weapons. The final confrontation with Homelander, the monster she'd feared and fought against for years, was happening whether she was ready or not. And this time, she had to win. Because this universe didn't have years of conditioning to accept Homelander's atrocities. These people weren't beaten down by Vought's propaganda. They could actually stop him, if Annie could keep them alive long enough to do it. Annie hit Times Square at full speed, light trailing behind her like a comet. Homelander hovered 50 feet above the panicking crowd, heat vision carving through the night sky in warning shots. His face twisted into the monstrous rage she'd seen him barely contain for years. "There she is!" Homelander's voice boomed across the square. "The traitor, the liar, the ungrateful little nobody who I made into something. You didn't make me anything. John," Annie shouted back, using his real name deliberately. In their universe, only a handful of people knew it. The intimacy of it, the reminder that she'd seen behind his mask, was a calculated strike at his ego. "I was a hero before Vought. You're just a lab experiment that learned to smile for cameras." Homelander's eyes flared brighter. Below them, sword agents were evacuating civilians with impressive efficiency. But thousands still remained trapped in the square. The rest of the Seven had stopped their performance, clustering together uncertainly. Queen Maeve looked between Homelander and Annie with something that might have been hope. The others just looked scared. Sam Wilson swooped in from the east, shield on his arm, wings cutting through the air. "Homelander, stand down. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and the entire world just watched video evidence of your crimes. Whatever move you make now, you make in front of cameras and witnesses? Outnumbered." Homelander laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. Captain America, how adorable. You think your little shield and wings make you my equal? He turned his heat vision towards Sam. Annie blasted Homelander with concentrated light before he could fire, the photonic energy striking his face hard enough to snap his head back. Not enough to injure, Homelander was nearly invulnerable, but enough to break his focus. "You want to fight someone?" Annie called out. "Fight me! Leave them out of it!" Homelander wiped his face, looking at his gloved hand like he couldn't believe she'd actually struck him. Then his expression transformed into something genuinely dangerous. Not the performative anger he showed for cameras, but real, unfiltered rage. "You know what? I'm done pretending." Homelander's voice dropped to conversational volume, but somehow it carried across the square. "Done pretending to be a hero. Done pretending to care about these ants. Done pretending that I need anyone's approval or love or adulation." His eyes locked on Annie. "I am a god. I can do whatever the fuck I want. And right now, I want to watch you burn." He moved with terrifying speed, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Annie barely got her arms up before his fist connected, the impact sending her crashing through a building's facade. Glass and concrete rained down as she tumbled through what looked like a retail space, displays shattering around her. Pain exploded across her ribs. Enhanced durability kept her alive, but Homelander hit harder than anything she'd faced before. She forced herself upright, light flaring defensively. Homelander floated through the hole he'd created, cape billowing, backlit by Times Square's neon. "You really thought you could expose me? Ruin my expansion? You're nothing, Annie. You've always been nothing. A C-list hero playing at relevance?" "Maybe," Annie gasped, gathering energy in her palms, "but I'm not the one having a psychotic break because people saw what I really am." She unleashed everything she had, photonic blasts at maximum output, light so intense it turned the room into a sun. Homelander raised his arms, tanking the assault with barely a flinch. When the light faded, he was smiling again. "My turn." His heat vision lanced out. Annie threw herself aside, but not fast enough. Searing pain cut across her shoulder as the beam grazed her. The smell of burning flesh and fabric filled her nostrils. Then Sam was there, shield deflecting Homelander's next attack. The heat vision ricocheted off the vibranium, scoring across a wall. "You're not fighting her alone, you son of a bitch." Bucky came through a side entrance, vibranium arm gleaming, rifle in his other hand, firing specialized rounds that Annie suspected were designed for enhanced individuals. They struck Homelander's chest and exploded in bursts of electrical discharge. Not harmful, but apparently annoying enough to make him turn his attention. "Oh good, more ants." Homelander's voice dripped with contempt. World War II nostalgia and a man with a metal arm. This is what Earth's mightiest heroes have become? Outside, Annie heard the distinctive sound of repulsor technology. Through the shattered wall, she saw an Iron Man suit, but not Tony Stark. The voice that came through was younger, female. "This is Ironheart, engaging hostile." Riri Williams opened fire with repulsor blasts, joined moments later by what looked like War Machine. The combined assault actually pushed Homelander back several feet, his expression shifting from contempt to genuine surprise. "Finally something with actual firepower," he muttered. Then louder, "Seven, stop standing there and fight." But the seven weren't responding. Annie risked a glance through the destroyed wall and saw why. Queen Maeve had her sword at A-Train's throat, holding the speedster hostage. The Deep looked like he wanted to flee. Black Noir stood motionless, clearly receiving contradictory orders through whatever communication system Vought used. Translucent was nowhere visible. And Stormfront was squaring off against someone Annie hadn't expected to see. Thor, the actual god of thunder, stood with Stormwind crackling with lightning, his expression one of profound disgust. "You dare claim the lightning?" Thor's voice resonated with divine authority. "You dare wear symbols of power while spreading hate and fear? I have faced Nazis before, creature. Killing them never troubled my conscience." Stormfront fired plasma blasts at Thor. He didn't bother dodging, just tanked the assault and responded with a lightning strike that sent her crashing into pavement hard enough to create a crater. Back in the building, Homelander was adapting to the multiple attackers, using his speed and flight to create distance. his heat vision keeping them at bay. He was stronger than any individual opponent, but the coordinated assault from heroes who actually worked as a team was clearly frustrating him. "You think this changes anything?" Homelander shouted. "I'm still the most powerful being in the square. None of you can actually hurt me." "Maybe not individually," a new voice said. Annie's heart leapt as a portal opened and Dr. Strange stepped through, the eye of Agamotto glowing at his chest. "But I wonder how your invulnerability fares against dimensional banishment." Strange's hands moved in complex patterns, mystic energy forming intricate geometries. Homelander's eyes widened, perhaps the first time Annie had ever seen genuine fear on his face. "Wait!" The spell activated. Golden chains of pure magic wrapped around Homelander, binding him in place. He struggled, heat vision firing wildly, but the chains held. Strange floated closer, expression cold. "I've dealt with beings who thought themselves gods," Strange said quietly. "Dormammu, Thanos. Compared to them, you're a particularly violent child having a tantrum." Homelander strained against the bindings, veins bulging in his neck. "I am a god. I'm Homelander. I can do whatever I want." "No," Annie said, limping forward despite the pain in her shoulder. She met Homelander's eyes directly for the first time without fear. "You're a broken man given too much power and not enough love. You're what happens when a corporation creates a hero without understanding what heroism actually means. And you're done." For a moment, just a moment, something cracked in Homelander's expression. The rage faltered, revealing the desperate, traumatized child beneath the god complex. The boy raised in a lab, tested and measured and never hugged. The person Vought had created and then exploited. Then the moment passed, and the rage returned. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "Vought won't stop. They'll send more. Better. They'll do nothing," Director Brand said, striding into the destroyed building with sword agents behind her. "Because the dimensional breach that brought you here is being sealed as we speak. Courtesy of Sword's dimensional engineering team and some assistance from Mr. Campbell in your universe." She held up a device showing Huey on a grainy video feed, giving a thumbs up from what looked like a Vought laboratory before the signal cut to static. "Your universe is being quarantined," Brand continued. "No more crossover, no more expansion. You're the last Vought assets that will ever enter our reality, and you're being deported immediately." Homelander's struggles intensified. "No, you can't. I won't go back. I won't." Strange tightened the mystic bindings. "Sleep." Homelander's eyes rolled back, and he went limp, still floating within the magical constraints. Outside, Thor had subdued Stormfront with approximately zero effort. Queen Maeve stood with her hands raised in surrender, A-Train unconscious at her feet. The Deep was crying and begging not to be hurt. Black Noir had simply stopped moving once Homelander fell, like a puppet with cut strings. Translucent had apparently fled. Annie made a mental note to hunt him down later. It was over. The invasion had lasted less than an hour from arrival to defeat. Vought's grand multiversal expansion had ended in utter failure, broadcast live across the world. Annie sank to her knees, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Sam was beside her immediately, supporting her weight. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know," Annie admitted. Her shoulder burned where Homelander's heat vision had grazed her. Her ribs ached from his punch. But more than the physical pain, she felt emotionally hollowed out. "I just fought my worst nightmare in front of millions of people. Ask me again tomorrow." "Fair enough," Sam helped her stand. "For what it's worth, you were incredible. Stood up to a genuine monster and didn't break." "I've had practice," Annie said with a weak smile. Jessica Jones appeared, looking only slightly disheveled. "Contessa's team is already spinning this as a victory for international cooperation and institutional oversight. Just so you know, Brand's probably going to try to use this as justification for enhanced registration again." "Let her try," Annie said tiredly. "I just proved I'm willing to fight corporate-controlled heroes to protect this universe. That should count for something." Outside, the crowds that hadn't evacuated were returning, phones raised, filming the aftermath. Sword agents were securing the Seven, Homelander still unconscious in Strange's bindings, the others in power-dampening restraints. Christine Everhart was already reporting live. Unprecedented cooperation between multiple hero factions to repel what officials are calling an attempted corporate colonization of our universe. The individual known as Starlight, previously detained by Sword as a multiversal threat, proved instrumental in both exposing and defeating the Seven. Questions are now being raised about institutional approaches to enhanced individuals from other realities. Annie barely heard it. She was watching Sword agents prepare to transport the Seven back through the rapidly closing dimensional breach. Watching Homelander, the monster who'd haunted her nightmares, who'd controlled and threatened and brutalized his way through her universe, being literally dragged out of this reality in magical chains. Queen Maeve caught Annie's eye as agents led her away. The older hero mouthed two words, "Thank you." Annie nodded. Maeve had been broken by Vought, had given up hope of ever escaping or changing things. Seeing Homelander defeated, even in another universe, might give her the courage to fight back in their own. Or maybe it would just make things worse when they returned. Annie tried not to think about that. Doctor Strange approached, the eye of Agamotto dimming as he released the spell maintaining Homelander's unconsciousness. The barrier between universes is nearly sealed. Sword will push them through before it closes completely. They won't be able to return. "What about the people in my universe?" Annie asked. "The ones who are still suffering under Vought's control?" Strange's expression was sympathetic but firm. "That's their fight, unfortunately. We can't intervene in other realities without risking catastrophic destabilization. But the seal isn't perfect. Communication might still be possible, if someone on that side maintains the connection. Huey, he'd find a way." Annie had to believe that. "Ms. January." Director Brand approached, her earlier antagonism completely absent. "I owe you an apology. You were right about institutional overreach, and I was wrong to prioritize containment over trust. If you're willing, Sword would like to offer you a consultancy position, advising on multiversal threats, no detention or forced registration required." Annie studied Brand's face, looking for manipulation or hidden agendas. She found only genuine respect and maybe a touch of embarrassment. "Let me think about it," Annie said. "Right now, I just want to go home. Or, whatever counts as home in this universe." "That would be my couch," Jessica said, appearing with a bottle of whiskey. "Because you're not staying in whatever Sword facility Brand's offering, and you're sure as hell not disappearing into the Avengers compound. Street-level heroes stick together." Annie felt tears threatening again, but this time from relief and gratitude. "Your couch sounds perfect." As Sword agents finished preparing the dimensional portal, a swirling vortex of energy that would send the Seven back to their universe and seal the breach forever. Annie watched Homelander being carried through first, still unconscious, still bound in Strange's magic. The monster who'd defined so much of her trauma was leaving her life, possibly forever. She should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. The last of the Seven disappeared through the portal. Strange and Sword's dimensional specialists completed the sealing ritual. The vortex collapsed in on itself with a sound like reality sighing in relief. And then there was nothing but the normal chaos of Times Square at night. "It's over," Sam said quietly, standing beside her. "Yeah," Annie replied, watching her reflection in a broken window. Costume torn, shoulder bandaged, blonde hair matted with sweat and dust. She looked like hell. She felt worse, but she was alive, free, and standing in a universe that had chosen to believe her over institutional power. That had to count for something. "Come on," Jessica said, already walking toward the street. "Couch, whiskey, and absolutely zero hero bullshit for at least 12 hours. Doctor's orders." "You're not a doctor," Annie pointed out. "I have a doctorate in putting up with superpowered nonsense." "Close enough." As they left Times Square behind, the site of Vought's failed invasion and Annie's final confrontation with Homelander, Annie felt something shift inside her. Not healing exactly. The trauma was still there, would probably always be there. But maybe, just maybe, she could start building something new in this universe. Something genuine, something earned, something that didn't require corporate approval or performative heroism. Just Annie January, trying to be a hero in a world that might actually let her succeed. 2 weeks after the Seven's invasion, Annie stood on the roof of Jessica Jones's apartment building, watching the sun rise over Hell's Kitchen. Her shoulder had healed, enhanced biology combined with medical attention from Sword's surprisingly excellent doctors. The physical wounds were closing. The psychological ones would take longer. Below her, the city was waking up. Delivery trucks rumbled through streets. Early morning joggers hit their routes. Coffee shops opened their doors. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that they'd almost become markets for a multiversal corporation's superhero franchise. Her encrypted comm buzzed. She'd been getting calls constantly since the invasion, media requests, political inquiries, hero organizations wanting meetings. She'd ignored most of them, but this number was one she'd been hoping to see. "Huey?" she answered, heart in her throat. "Annie!" His voice was clearer than their last communication, though still carrying that dimensional static. "Oh God, it's so good to hear you. Are you okay? We saw the footage. Homelander attacking you. The fight." "I'm okay," Annie said quickly. "Bruised, exhausted, but okay. What about you? The breach closing, did it?" "I'm fine. Butcher and I managed to get out of the Voot lab before security found us." Huey laughed, slightly manic. "The dimensional seal worked. Our scientists confirmed it. No more crossover between universes. Vought's multiversal expansion plans are dead." "Good." Annie felt relief wash over her. "What happened when the Seven came back?" Huey's tone darkened. "Homelander woke up during transport. He was... Annie, I've never seen him that unhinged. Ranting about gods and ants, about how you humiliated him, about revenge. Vought had to sedate him again. They're keeping him contained in their deep research facility, telling the public he's on a special mission. And the others? Maeve requested immediate retirement. Vought granted it. They're terrified she'll go public about what happened in your universe. A-Train's doing damage control, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. The Deep is just... the Deep. Pathetic as always. Stormfront's in medical. Thor apparently hit her hard enough to crack even her enhanced biology." Huey paused. "Black Noir and Translucent are unaccounted for. Vought's covering that up too." Annie processed this, imagining the chaos in her home universe. Vought's perfect system disrupted by failure. Their premier assets revealed as monsters to an entirely different reality. It wouldn't destroy them. Corporations like Vought were too entrenched, too powerful to fall from a single defeat, but it was a crack in their armor. "How are things with the boys?" she asked. "Better, actually. Your fight with Homelander went viral in our universe too. Someone on the Vought media team leaked it before they could suppress it. Public's asking questions about the Seven they never asked before. Butcher's using the momentum to push his exposure campaign. We might actually have a chance." Annie smiled despite the ache in her chest. "Good. You deserve that chance. All of you do." "Annie," Huey's voice cracked slightly, "I miss you. I know you can't come back. The seal's permanent. Our scientists confirmed it. But knowing you're out there, in another universe, alive and fighting, it helps. It helps a lot." "I miss you too," Annie whispered. "Every day. But Huey, you have to promise me something. Don't let missing me stop you from living. Find someone who makes you happy, fight the good fight, and know that somewhere across dimensional barriers, I'm rooting for you. I promise. Same for you. Find happiness there. You've earned it." He paused. "The signal's degrading. This might be our last clear communication. Anything else you need to say?" Annie thought of everything she wanted to tell him. How much he'd meant to her. How his faith in her had kept her going through Vought's darkest moments. How loving him had taught her that genuine connection was possible even in their corrupted world. But the words felt inadequate. "Thank you," she finally said, "for teaching me to investigate instead of just react. For believing I could be better than Vought's script. For being real in a universe of performed heroism. You made me a better hero and a better person." "Annie!" The signal dissolved into static, then cut completely. The dimensional seal had fully stabilized. No more communication, no more crossover, no more connection to the universe she'd called home for 26 years. Annie stood alone on the rooftop, holding a dead calm, and let herself cry. Not from grief, though there was grief, but from the overwhelming complexity of feeling simultaneously liberated and lost. She'd escaped Vaught's hell, defeated Homelander, earned respect in a new universe. But she'd also lost Huey, lost any chance of helping the people still suffering under the Seven's corruption, lost her entire history and identity. "Figured I'd find you up here," Jessica's voice came from the rooftop access door. She walked over, carrying 2 cups of coffee, and handed one to Annie without comment on the tears. "Huey, last communication before the seal stabilized." Annie accepted the coffee gratefully. "He's okay. They're all okay. Fighting the good fight. And you're here, crying alone on a rooftop at sunrise like every brooding hero cliché I've ever investigated." Jessica sipped her coffee. "Want company, or should I leave you to your melodramatic moment?" Despite everything, Annie laughed. "Company's good." They stood in silence for a while, watching the city wake up. Finally, Jessica spoke. "Sam Wilson called, officially offering you Avengers membership. Full benefits, tower access, the works. He's been getting pressure from politicians to integrate you into official hero structures after your performance against Homelander." "What did you tell him?" "That you'd think about it. But Annie?" Jessica turned to face her directly. "You don't have to join the Avengers to matter. Street-level work is just as important. More important, sometimes, because we're helping people the big heroes forget about. You've done good work these past few weeks in Hell's Kitchen. People trust you now. That's worth more than any fancy tower membership." Annie considered. The Avengers represented legitimacy, resources, official recognition. Everything she'd never had with Vought, because their recognition came with ownership strings attached. But Jessica was right. She'd found something genuine working street level, helping people without cameras or corporate oversight. "I want to keep doing what I've been doing," Annie said slowly. "The community work, the investigations, the unglamorous heroism that doesn't make headlines. But maybe part-time Avengers, available for world-ending threats, but primarily focused on Hell's Kitchen and similar neighborhoods? That's actually perfect. Gives you institutional backing without institutional control." Jessica's approval was evident. "I'll tell Sam. He'll probably love it. Gets political credit for integrating you while respecting your autonomy." "What about Sword? Brand's consultancy offer?" "Up to you. Brand seems genuinely chastened by the whole situation. Might actually listen to your advice about handling multiversal refugees with dignity instead of detention." Jessica finished her coffee. "You've got options, Annie. Real ones, not the fake choice between submission and destruction that Vought offered. That's what freedom looks like. Messy, complicated, and entirely yours to navigate." Annie's comm buzzed, not the encrypted one, but her regular phone. A text from Matt Murdock. "Breakfast? Fogwell's Gym, 8 a.m. Have information about trafficking ring you'll want to hear. Real work, real heroism, real relationships built on mutual respect instead of corporate mandate." "Yeah," Annie said, smiling. "I can work with this." The press conference happened a week later. Annie stood at a podium with Sam Wilson on one side and Director Brand on the other, facing a room full of journalists who'd covered everything from the Chitauri invasion to the blip. "I'm here to announce my decision regarding my status in this universe," Annie began, her voice steady. "I'm accepting a consulting position with Sword focused on multiversal refugee integration and threat assessment. I'm also accepting part-time Avengers membership for major crises. But my primary work will remain street-level heroism in Hell's Kitchen and surrounding neighborhoods." Questions erupted immediately. Annie fielded them with the same honesty she'd shown in her first interview with Christine Everhart. "Why street-level instead of full Avengers membership? Because I spent years with the Seven doing big, flashy heroics that looked impressive but helped no one. I learned that genuine impact often happens in small moments. Stopping a mugging, helping a family find housing, gathering evidence against corrupt landlords. That work matters, and it doesn't get enough attention. Are you concerned about the Seven returning? The dimensional barrier is sealed. If it ever reopens, I'll be ready. But I'm not living in fear of my past. I'm building a future here. What message do you have for other multiversal refugees?" Annie paused, thinking of everyone who might someday find themselves torn from their reality and dropped into something alien and terrifying. You're not alone. You're not broken for struggling to adjust. And you don't owe this universe immediate perfection or compliance. Take time to heal, find people who see you as a person rather than a threat or asset, and build the life you deserve. Freedom is terrifying after control, but it's worth it. The questions continued, but Annie felt centered in a way she hadn't since arriving in this universe. She'd fought Homelander and won. She'd exposed Vogt's invasion. She'd earned trust through actions instead of corporate branding, and now she was choosing her own path with genuine autonomy. After the conference, Sam pulled her aside. You know the offer's always open, right? Full Avengers membership if you change your mind. I know, and I appreciate it. Annie smiled. But I think I need to figure out who I am without any organization defining me. Vought controlled my identity for too long. Even benevolent institutional membership feels premature. I get that. Sam's expression was understanding. For what it's worth, Steve would have liked you. Same stubborn integrity. Same refusal to compromise principles for convenience. I'll take that as the compliment it is. As Annie left the press conference, she found a small crowd waiting. Not reporters or politicians, but people from Hell's Kitchen. The bodega owner whose store she'd saved. The family from the tenement fire. Residents she'd helped over the past month. People whose names she knew and who knew hers. We wanted to say thank you, an older woman said, stepping forward, for staying, for choosing us instead of the fancy tower and global missions. That means something. Annie felt tears threatening again, but these were different from the rooftop crying. These were tears of belonging, of community, of finding purpose that wasn't scripted or manufactured. Thank you for trusting me, she replied. For seeing past the multiversal refugee label and just treating me like a neighbor. That night, Annie stood on her new apartment rooftop. Jessica had helped her find a place in Hell's Kitchen, small but hers, and looked out over the city. Somewhere across dimensional barriers, Huey and the boys were fighting Vought. Somewhere in this universe, heroes she'd come to respect were protecting the world from cosmic threats. And here, in this neighborhood, Annie January was learning what it meant to be a hero without corporations, without scripts, without anything except her own moral compass, in the community that had accepted her. Her comm buzzed. Matt Murdock. Movement on the trafficking case. Rooftop in 20? Annie smiled, light flickering around her fingers in anticipation. On my way. She took flight, the city spreading beneath her like a map of possibility. The lights of Hell's Kitchen guided her path, not the harsh corporate neon of Vogt's world, but the warm, imperfect glow of a neighborhood that didn't need her to be perfect. Just present, just trying, just genuinely heroic. For the first time since falling through realities, Annie January felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. The multiverse was vast, full of infinite possibilities and parallel lives. But in this universe, in this city, in this moment, Annie had found something she'd never had with the Seven. She'd found home. The months that followed brought their own challenges. Annie testified before UN committees about multiversal security without compromising refugee dignity. She trained with the Avengers during their monthly sessions. Learning to work with heroes who actually functioned as a team, she helped SWORD develop protocols that treated dimensional travelers as people rather than threats. And every night, she returned to Hell's Kitchen to do the unglamorous work that mattered most. The anniversary of her arrival came and went. Annie marked it quietly with Jessica, Matt, Sam, and Bucky, the people who'd helped her build a life from nothing. No press coverage, no grand celebration. Just 5 people who understood the weight of trauma and the value of earned trust, sharing drinks and stories on a rooftop. Think you'll ever stop looking over your shoulder for Homelander? Jessica asked at one point. Annie considered. Probably not completely. Trauma doesn't work like that. But I'm learning to live with it instead of being controlled by it. That's growth, Matt said approvingly. Took me years to reach that point with my own demons. The dimensional seal held strong. No communications from Huey, no breaches, no sign that Vought would ever threaten this universe again. It should have brought peace. Instead, Annie found herself wondering about the people she'd left behind. Whether Maeve had finally broken free, whether Butcher's crusade was succeeding, whether the children being injected with Compound 5 would ever know freedom. She couldn't save them. The multiverse's barriers prevented that. But she could honor their struggle by being the hero they deserved, genuine, accountable, and free from corporate control. One quiet Tuesday, Annie received a package at her apartment. No return address, but inside was a single item, a photograph from her universe showing the boys, Huey, Butcher, Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Kimiko, standing together, raising glasses in a toast. On the back, in Huey's handwriting, "Still fighting. Thanks to you, we believe we can win." Ayage. Someone had found a way to send physical objects through the sealed barrier, just once. A final goodbye and message of hope across realities. Annie framed the photograph and placed it on her nightstand, a reminder of where she came from and why the work mattered. Then she grabbed her costume and headed out. Hell's Kitchen needed Starlight, and Annie January had learned that being needed, genuinely needed by people she chose to help, was the most heroic feeling in any universe. The streets of New York stretched before her, full of crime and corruption and injustice, but also full of community, resilience, and people trying to do right despite impossible circumstances. She'd face it all, not as Vogt's asset, not as Sword's specimen, not as anyone's weapon or tool, just as herself, a hero who'd survived hell and chosen to keep fighting anyway. That was enough. That would always be enough.